years.
2.5 years.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Awesome.
Cool.
Is it everything you figured it would be, being married?
I don't know. Thankfully, we got married a little later. I was 31 and Steph was 28. And so I think if I had gotten married at 21, I would have been sorely disappointed.
Yeah.
But I think after kind of seeing my friends go through some marriage stuff and just, what is this really? I think we knew what we were getting into.
Wow.
For the most part. There are surprises.
Yeah.
Well, that was one of the things that was really cool when I saw you guys perform before, was how much of your story, of your personal life and interaction comes through in the performance.
Yeah.
And I think it's good lessons for the listeners.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Especially if you're starting out in a relationship.
Yeah.
So,
Christina, my wife, and I were sitting in a parking lot, and I was showing her your music for the first time, and I showed her the song, what's it called?
A Lot to Learn.
A Lot to Learn, yes.
That's amazing.
And we were just laughing so hard because that's exactly like, you're really good at like pulling out the story of marriage.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so true. It's amazing.
Awesome.
So, and I see that a lot in your music. Like the first song on your album, which is The Story of Us, which is like, I can see that now. It's just really neat. So I love it. Like,
Thank you.
That's where your music comes from. So tell me about your songwriting process. Like,
Well, it's super easy.
Yeah, he's lying again. It's a problem. It's not easy at all. I think we've grown to find a way that's working for us, but
but it's taken. I mean, we started trying to write songs a year before we got married, probably, and oh my goodness, I joke that I quit the band 2 or 3 times because of bad writing sessions that we had, but it's not really a joke. I legitimately said, Stephanie, this will not get in the way of our marriage surviving. I'm done.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was the one that was pushing a little harder. Like, I think if we can get through this, we just need to keep trying. And there was something. I mean, sometimes when you remember where you were when you had a kind of impactful thought.
Right. Yeah.
I remember walking from the car to the house, and I could probably find the place I was in the yard. And I had this almost like it hit me between the eyes. Like, if you put the work in now, like what fruit it will bear later will be far worth it.
wow.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, we have to keep trying.
But the crazy thing was, we found out we were communicating poorly. Stephanie had written, the way she wrote songs, she wrote with 100 different songwriters in Nashville. And she got the final say because it was Stephanie Smith, the band.
Sure.
And I wrote with Colin and AJ since 1996, so I knew how to write with those guys. And it's strange, it's almost telepathic at this point. We just make decisions without even talking about it.
Yeah.
But
and all you do in a Nashville songwriting session is bounce ideas off each other. So it's constantly, you're trying to keep the dialogue going. You're learning about somebody, and you're trying to encourage or like chase down an idea.
Yeah.
And so the silence, when we would try and write, I'd be like, do you like it? And he would just shrug his shoulders. He wouldn't even say yes or no.
which totally works in House of Heroes world.
Yeah. So it would lead to then, writing is such a vulnerable personal thing. And so all of a sudden I felt so exposed. I'd thrown ideas out there.
Yeah.
He wasn't responding with either positive or negative. And so I would start to shut down and be like, you hate me. You hate all of my ideas.
So, when did y'all start actually doing this process in your marriage? Was it like before you got married, or?
Well, we tried writing 1 or 2 songs before we got married.
Yeah, we did. We were still writing for
Our respective.
Stephanie Smith, or we were writing. We didn't have any clue that Copperlily was actually going to be a thing, and we sort of stumbled upon it because we were trying to get to family vacation for a week, but we couldn't afford to miss a week of work, so we booked acoustic shows out there playing Stephanie's songs and House Hero songs. Yeah. We ended up making enough money that we were like, maybe we should try something.
Yeah.
And so about a year into marriage was when we were like, okay, this has been fun, watching movies and eating ice cream every night, but let's start trying something. Let's start trying to write some songs.
Yep. So we got a fire pit, and we wrote that whole first EP almost outside, just around our fire pit, just in the backyard.
There's not a song on that EP that's not good.
Yeah.
It's
Thank
really
you.
good.
Thanks, guys.
That is amazing. All of it's good.
Yeah.
But when I first heard the EP, I was like, wow, every song. And I hear your influence, and I hear your influence.
Isn't that
Absolutely.
cool?
It's like it's not House of Heroes.
It's something
and
different.
And it's not Stephanie
Yeah.
Smith. It's
Yeah.
something in the middle, and it works really, really well.
It's awesome.
Wow, that's great. Thank you guys.
So have you found like it's brought you closer together, like communication wise, songwriting? I
For sure. Yeah. It's actually illuminated some things for me where I would say things to her that I would say in a House of Heroes writing session. Like for instance, I would say, "No, that's a dumb idea. Let's try this." And she would be like, "You can't say that to me, I'm your wife. Don't tell me, And I was like, "Oh my goodness, I talk to my bandmates this way. That is completely disrespectful." Yeah, right. They are guys. Yeah. There is a difference there.
Right.
I think the interesting thing is we realized two things. There's not just one way to create. Because a lot of times Tim would just push back when I'd be like, try it this way. And he was like, that's not how we do it in House of Heroes. And I'm like, I am not House of Heroes, and there are other ways to, and
just try
it. And then for me, I was a communication major. And so I would just kind of feel like I was delivering this message, and Tim was like, can you try and say it a different way? And so the two things we came out with, there's not one way to create, like one right way to create, and there's not one right way to communicate. So maybe there's a song in that, I don't know, because it rhymes, but those were two kind of mind-blowing, growing things for us.
Wow. So it sounds like the experience itself was good fodder for your lyrics and
yeah,
that's exactly
they really
right.
were. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I think marriage itself is like lends a plethora of
I know
of ideas for
there's no shortage.
That's exactly right.
So you guys just got a house, right?
We did.
Oh yeah, bought our first house.
How was that process?
It was
an adventure.
That's right. There we go. That's the nice way of saying it.
Yeah.
It was definitely
I
an
know
adventure.
we were supposed to do this like in May, May 23rd. And
Right.
It was like, oh no, we got house.
Yeah.
problems.
Yeah.
It was insane.
It really was.
And it really is a long story, and I love every detail of it, so to abbreviate it is hard for me. Tim does better at abbreviating it, but
we've been looking for a year and a half.
Yeah.
And there were several points along the way where we were so bummed that we either lost out on a house in a bidding war or we just weren't seeing anything, because the market in Nashville is just exploding right now, and so we're very quickly being priced out of all the neighborhoods that we wanted to be in.
With a small, modest budget.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So we found a place. We had resolved to not look anymore around Christmas time. We said we're going to put out this Copperlily record.
Different band.
and we're going to go for that, and then we'll look for some houses, because we're doing this independent. It's not cheap,
Right.
And so then, of course, a month and a half later, we find the dream house in the dream neighborhood for the dream price.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
awesome.
it was listed $100 under our max budget. And so we thought, okay, we could put a full price offer in, but if anybody else comes in with a higher offer, we're tapped out. We can't do it. So we begged the listing agent, please let us see the house before it lists so that we can kind of have the upper hand. And he was gracious enough to let us in 2 days before it hit the market, so we could get a bid in.
Right.
We put a full price offer in, and
set to expire the night before it hit the market.
so he had to answer before anyone else got to see it. But he accepted it, no counter.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
So we thought,
That's
wow,
crazy.
that's exciting. It's in the neighborhood. Because I was like really praying for a story. I wanted, when somebody came to our house, to sit down and go, you got to hear how we got this house. I wanted that.
Just blessed us. Yeah,
And so I was like, cool. Who knew we could get the neighborhood we wanted for the price we wanted, and the story did not end there. So we had decided this was kind of the year to risk for Copperlily. We don't have kids yet. We're, still newlyweds, but we want to maybe start having kids soon. So we were like, let's go for Copperlily this year. So that means quit our jobs.
Wow.
So I had already put in my notice at work when the house came on the market. And apparently the loan company wasn't excited about me getting approved on my...
You mean that W-2 job you've had for the past 4 years is now 1099?
Yeah.
And so our mortgage broker, he flipped his lid. He was like, you need a co-signer. There's no way.
Right.
And I'm telling you, I'd been praying about this for a year. And the crazy thing about God is, somebody can't take this and go, well, it worked for her, I'm going to go try it. You need the Holy Spirit, right? To be leading you.
Right.
But where I felt like he was leading me was, I got this. I'm going to blow your mind. Like, I'm going to show you just how good I am in through this story. And he really did. And we didn't need a co-signer. We had to jump through so many hoops and so much paperwork.
We actually had to push our closing time back. We didn't have to move the date, but the time, we were supposed to close at 11 a.m. It had to go back to 4 p.m. And then the title attorney showed up a half hour late because she was still working on our papers right up to the last second.
But even I mean, for me, this was such a faith journey too, because people kept telling us, like, good willing friends, they were like, yeah, I've been through the house stuff, you'll probably have to change your closing date, but I believe God will give you the house. And I was like, no, I just, something in my spirit was like, this day, it is this day. And so when we had to change the time, but not the date, and I just knew it. And so I came out of there and I was like, anyone who comes in our house is going to hear this story about how God provided this house. Because it just, there were so many things that quote unquote shouldn't have worked out, and they did, you know. So
that's awesome. That's how God works.
I know.
We can tell the story.
Yes.
It's so neat.
That's goodness.
It seems like I heard someone told me that that this was on some reality show or something.
It's about to be. We haven't quite.
That's part of the reason that we had to move the date for this show is because House Hunters
on HGTV.
Stephanie contacted them
months ago.
And of course, they got a hold of us the day before we closed. They were like, "Hey, you guys want to be on the show? We came across your picture, and you guys are really cute, and your music's really good." And she's like, "We would love to, but we close tomorrow." And they said, well, this is kind of a spoiler alert, but they said, well, we don't start talking to you till after you close anyway.
Oh,
like,
wow.
Oh. Okay, well, we'll still do it.
Wow, so we filmed the first part, and we have a little bit more filming to do in June when we get home. So.
That's neat.
Well, we didn't mean to break an NDA or anything that you guys might
Yeah.
I know, I'm looking at Tim going, don't tell that on.
But it would be good to know when it airs, because I'd love to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, they said about 5 or 6 months from now, so we'll let y'all know.
We'll promo it whenever.
Awesome,
definitely.
Cool.
That's cool.
Okay, I was going to ask you guys, what is your take on the whole, this is a broad question. We've talked a lot on our show about Christian labels and Christian marketing and things like this. And I've heard a lot of bands dealing with this issue of, is it a Christian band? Is it Christians in a band? And all this sort of thing. And I hear a lot of stories about people getting, like, they start in a youth group band and they end up getting signed, and all of a sudden they're stuck in this, and some of them aren't even really converted. And there's just all kinds of problems around the Christian music industry. What has been y'all's experience with that? I mean, I don't mean to, like, you don't want to slam your label or anything like that.
Yeah, of course.
But just, you know, in general, what the feel is with the Christian music community and that sort of thing. Do you have strong opinions about it, or is it just or whatever?
Yeah, I'm going to let Stephanie start with this one, because I've spent entirely too much time in my own mind on that very topic. But you go ahead.
Well, you know, in my personal experience, I was excited to be part of the Christian music community, and then in experiencing that and being part of it, it's like, you know, the curtain's pulled back and you're like, wait, these are people too, you know. These are messed up people, and these are people who get greedy, and these are people who have their own agenda, and you know, so you're going to find that in the church, and you're going to find that in Christian business, and you're going to find that in Hollywood, and you know, so I think that's a good thing to remember, is that it's still just people, and we're all messed up. But as far as a creative standpoint, I felt like the floodgates opened for me in leaving the Christian music industry, because in those 100 writing sessions I sat down in, you know, you're trying to write for radio, because ultimately radio is going to put butts in seats at shows, you know, and
drive the industry.
Right, exactly. And they kind of know it. So they are the gatekeepers, especially for Christian music. So, you know, I'd send a song to the label, and the label was like, man, this is really cool, and we want to encourage creativity in you, but we need radio to like this, and so can you rewrite it? So, you know, can you say it differently? Can you, you know, it needs to be more vertical, they would say, you know, like more up and down instead of broad, or... and so it felt very much like, you know, unless it was this tiny little dot that you hit a bullseye on. You know, there was no room to really explore. So I left there, and I was really just kind of broken over the dream, feeling like I'd failed. And, you know, just there were a lot of things in the industry changing when I hit, when Stephanie Smith came onto the market, and it just didn't work the way anyone thought. Goatee, myself, my management, anybody. So in leaving that, I was dealing with a lot of heartache, and I had gotten really tired of music, tired of Christian music, couldn't listen to it, because I constantly felt I did, and I felt deeply compared anytime I listened, you know, to another vocalist that I had toured with, and it was working for them. I felt like I didn't measure up, and so it created really nasty things for my just my heart. So I just stepped away for a while, and I felt like this thing that I loved, music and singing, for so long, I almost despised it, and I didn't recognize that. So it sent me on a journey to fall in love with music, and a huge part of that for me was worship music, leading worship at my church, because the writing process had been done, and there were songs I had already connected to, and I could just sing my heart out to Jesus, and no one was going to write a review about it, you know, leading my friends and family at church, you know, in worship. But I could use my voice and sing to my Lord. So that's kind of where the falling back in love with this happened. And then the freedom to write whatever I wanted. And I was a newlywed. So these songs, like, I write a lot of our lyrics. Tim helps a lot. But a lot of these things are coming from, like, the deepest place where I feel like I'm writing now the way I've always wanted to, but Christian radio won't play it, you know. It doesn't, even though it's edifying to marriage and that sort of thing, it doesn't quite fit. It doesn't.
Yeah, that's the bummer thing. Is I feel like since the 90s, the box that Christian music fits into just keeps on shrinking and keeps on shrinking, to the point where there are certain producers that work, there are certain writers that work, and if you're not with one of those writers or producers, it's going to be an uphill battle for you to get on the radio.
You can hear this on the major Christian radio stations. Their songs are getting slimmer and slimmer. Like you know, it's a repeat over and over and over again of the same.
It's a narrow message.
It's very narrow.
That's exactly right.
I feel you on that.
Yeah. So I had we were talking with a buddy who's a worship pastor yesterday. Yeah. And he had a great take on it, because he was so frustrated that these worship albums are coming out and they're getting reviewed, and some of them are getting slammed, and some of them are getting praised, and it's like, are we really reviewing how we communicate with our Creator? Wow. You know? Yeah. And he said, his line was, if I want to listen to good music, I'll go listen to good music. But if I want to honor God, I'll sing some worship songs. Yeah. Wow. And I was like,
that's sad.
Yeah, it's a little bit sad, but there's, there's a lot of truth in it. You know, it's
there is.
So that's the interesting thing for me, is I could never delineate the difference between congregational corporate worship, and that needs to fit inside certain parameters, because not everybody has Freddie Mercury's voice. Sure. You know, not everybody can sing Mariah Carey's runs, so it has to be within a certain.
You guys got all that down.
Yeah, right. Well, we can keep dreaming.
We can keep trying.
But it's one of those things where, okay, corporate worship needs to be that. It does. And that's totally fine.
So that it can be inclusive.
Exactly.
I think there's a beauty to somebody who's tone deaf being able to at least follow a song and raise their voice to the Lord. We don't need, worship doesn't always have to be so artful, but I think there's a place to take. Nope.
Who's that?
It's not me. I'm dead. Dude.
Oh, it is me. I never have my phone on. Sorry.
That's quite all right. We are completely unprofessional.
That's right.
We admit it.
We can mess with anyone.
Right on.
So funny.
No problem. That's why we pre-record.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Well,
that's why we're not on the radio.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
That was the dentist calling.
Oh, gotcha.
I'll call her back.
Yeah.
What you were saying about that tone deaf thing, there's a Rich Mullins is my hero.
I love Rich Mullins.
Me too. And one of the things that he talks about is going to this worship service, and these guys were totally horrible. Like, the whole thing was just terrible. And he says it's the best worship experience I'd ever had in my life, And then he says, if you want to go to good music, I recommend this kind of music. But, that's art. It's music. Worship is something completely different. Entirely. And I feel you all on that. That's so true.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, so I feel like there needs to be space for art, for Christian art.
Yes.
That doesn't have to necessarily be described as anything other than, I'm making art. I feel like I've learned something, I've received something, and now I'm giving it out to the people. Whereas worship is like, I'm here in this community, and we are all taking what we have here, and we are offering it up.
Amen. That's right, dude.
Well, I think a lot of what's driving the problem that you guys maybe have experienced in all this is not even from top down, it's from bottom up. You've got all these people and their expectations of what Christian music is, that they aren't, when you don't provide that product exactly as they want it, then they start getting really fickle. Mm-hmm. And I remember one time I was at a For Today concert.
Oh, yeah.
And Maddie was on the stage saying, look, I'm not here to entertain you Christians. Mm-hmm. I'm here for the lost people that came in who need Jesus.
Nice. Wow.
And so that's, to me, I think that's part of the problem is we all, I won't listen to anything but Christian music.
Yeah.
And you're limiting the artistic nature of the artists themselves by doing that, because it's all God-given talent.
Right.
I mean, we don't say that Handel was a Christian artist.
Yeah.
But he wrote
Handel's Messiah.
Right. Yeah.
Right? But for some reason in our modern culture we do that.
Yeah.
And I think it's really a shame that we don't see God's glory in all of it, even if the lyrics aren't directed toward worship.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
It's good stuff.
So influences. What kind of influences?
Said Freddie Mercury in there.
Yeah, snuck that in.
I totally noticed the Queen.
Really?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
House of Heroes, like,
oh man,
it's such, like, I can see Queen in that. But
totally.
What's your?
They're literally my favorite band of all time.
He wore a Queen shirt yesterday.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Awesome. So I love that. I love classic '60s and '70s rock. Just that stuff, and then some 80s stuff, and then a lot of 90s stuff. So like the grunge era was when I wasn't allowed to listen to rock music, but I got to middle school and I was like, you can't tell me what to listen to anymore, Mom. And so I was like,
I'm gonna rebel.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Smashing Pumpkins. Right. Yeah.
That's great.
So all those Smashing Pumpkins, Soundgarden, all those bands, just total rock bands, and I just got way into it.
Yeah.
And so it's funny, I didn't realize at the time how much that stuff was influencing me until now I listen back to those records and I go, oh, I totally ripped that off. Big time, So.
Sure.
Yeah. But
I remember the first time I heard I Want to Dance with Somebody by Whitney Houston. I was like in grade school, and I was in a car seat still, I think. That's how young I think it was like 1990 or something. I was 5.
Yeah.
And a booster seat. And we were pulling into the driveway, and I was like, what is this? And my mom was like, you haven't heard this? I have, like, I guess, whatever, I was as a 5-year-old late to the game.
Sure.
But it changed my life, like Whitney and Mariah in the 90s. So I was young. I was born in 84, so I was like, enjoying this 10, 12, 13. So I was like, oh my gosh, give me the divas. Like, I loved their voices, what they could do. And I know it's not for everyone. Like, Tim's dad is like, just sing a note. Like, just hold a note. And they're like, but to me, I was so fascinated that you could do that with your voice. And I listened to it as a challenge. Like, can I do that? I think I can.
Yeah.
And then in high school, I went through a big punk rock phase. So I loved MXPX. Yeah, I know, right?
Whoa.
Well, DC Talk was sort of my median there. So I went like from the divas to like, what is this like cool rock and hip hop thing? I don't know. And then I was like, okay, now I'm punk rock and MXPX and and this whole like indie movement that started early 2000
me too,
Yep. So I loved Mike Herrera's voice from MXPX, and I had all their records on cassette in my Walkman.
Awesome.
So
Yeah.
Your band started out as like a punk rock band.
That's right.
In high
Yeah.
school?
Yeah. We had 3 goals: play overseas, tour in a bus, and open for MXPX. That was it. So.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So okay, I wanted to ask y'all some questions about some of your songs.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so like on the newest album, on the full album, there's a song "Shadows Glow."
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Okay, now I'm assuming that has something to do with your careers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So what was driving the lyrics of that song? Is that like don't get ahead of me in where I am musically or successfully, or how?
Well, we were fascinated by just how easy it is to be codependent,
Yeah. And not even realize it.
And we were talking about with the EP, because when we were writing that, I was going through this crazy growth spurt as a writer, having come out of, those parameters we were talking about in the Christian music industry. And Tim was like, whoa, like slow down almost. Like you're running ahead of me.
Yeah, totally. This is our project.
Yeah.
Slow it down. And she's like, I can't. I have to get this stuff out.
Wow.
And then on this second project, I felt, well, and other times it's like when it's not Copperlily's turn, House of Heroes is this animal, that I want to respect and honor because it's been around longer than I have. But at the same time, where do I fit in that? Because life isn't the same now, and Tim can't live the same way that he did when he was a bachelor, And so there's a tension, and we were like, well, you know what? Let's hone in on that. There are times where he is like in such a creative season and he's throwing all these cool guitar parts for Copperlily songs at me, and I don't have any lyrics to bring to the table. And there's part of me that's like, oh no, if I don't write something right now to this, he's going to use it for House of Heroes or a solo project, and I'll miss out. And so there has to be this kind of, there's a push and a pull and a and at the end of the day,
sometimes it's okay to go, this is your time to shine, and I'm going to take have you guys ever watched Friday Night Lights, the television show?
Yeah.
So the end of the whole series, when they, I don't want to spoil it, but there's something that comes up where they have an opportunity elsewhere, not because of anything that the coach did.
Right.
And he, we were really inspired by that.
Wow.
Where it was like, you're right. Like, it's been my time for so long. It's your time now.
Wow.
And I'm going to take step back and I'm going to be your biggest cheerleader, And so
it's part of the give and take.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
And that ultimately, even when you're in the shadows of your spouse or that you still have something to offer. Like you can make those shadows glow and it won't last forever.
I love that because it's like, yes, I'm basking in this light, but you're the glow of it. And I thought that was so cool, how you lean on one another in there. Because I'm, even as a promoter of the show that we're going to do here and everything, it's like everyone's asking me, who's this Copperlily? Because you guys are just getting
started.
But everybody knows House of Heroes.
Yeah.
So it's like you don't want to promote it as House of Heroes, right? Because I'm thinking, well, Stephanie's not going to like it if I'm going, this is all, about Tim. He's from House of Heroes. And so I was thinking a lot about that, especially when I heard the song. I was like, wow, that's a lot of what's going on.
Yeah.
That's right. So. Yeah. It's true, man. Yeah, that was a tough one to write and still a tough one to sing about, but vitally important.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I can't tell you how many marriages or even relationships in general I've seen where it's like, no, this is my thing and you just support me, and that's the way it is. Right. And it goes real bad from there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
So let's see, what was another one? Malia.
Yeah,
okay.
That's
Sweet
so funny.
Malia.
I'm glad you asked.
Okay,
we
so
keep meaning to release something that explains
I love the start of that. Like, is this song about me? Okay, but I don't know who that is.
Yeah. Is this song about me?
Yeah.
That's
I
great.
can't wait to, you go ahead.
So one person even reviewed the record, and they were like, "Are they singing to their unborn child?" We're like, "No, that is our 5-year-old niece. It's Tim's sister had a baby 5 years ago, obviously, and
so this is my sister's Instagram feed. Oh, okay, and awesome. So that's Malia right there.
Wow,
and
5 years old.
Was that her on the?
That was her. She had a little cold, and her nose was a little stuffy. Nice. So awesome. She changed everybody's world. She was the first grandchild on Tim's parents' side, and
I started writing that song the day that she was born.
Wow.
And I didn't finish it that day.
Yeah.
And so Stephanie challenged me about when she was maybe 3 years old, 2 or 3. She said, "You're gonna finish this song, and we're gonna sing it together."
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And she's just like a little performer herself, so it just seemed appropriate that because now there's 2 others. She has 2 younger brothers, and we were kind of like, "Hey, do we need to write songs for them too?" But
we'll get around to that.
Yeah, but yeah.
Come on, Uncle.
Yeah,
I know, right? Yeah,
let's go throw a football with them, and they'll be happy.
I know, yeah, exactly.
Well, my personal favorite on the new album is "Beautiful Unseen."
Nice. Yeah.
The lyrics, the melody. I love that it's very tricked out. It's got a lot of musical range happening in it. And so that's my favorite. I don't know if I've even got a question about it. Just
yeah, it has a cool story.
It does. That one, I agree. Stephanie wrote all the lyrics except for the last little bit of it. We wrote that together. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But she just knocked that one right out of the park. I was so excited when she showed me those lyrics. But I had come up with that guitar part, and I was like, "Hey, here's what I'm thinking. Here's the melody." And she was like, this was the beginning of us figuring out what works writing. Best for us. And so she said, "Record that on your phone and send it to me." So I did. And about 3 days later, and I thought she just forgot about it, but she comes and she's like, "I got lyrics to that melody you sent. Listen to this." She had been driving around in her car and, wherever she was going, listening to it and kind of just plotting out the lyrics for it. And that was the most painless process of writing that we had ever had. Wow.
And the crazy thing is I had written those lyrics probably almost a year before.
Oh, really?
And the melody I had for it just stunk. It just, it compared to Tim's, like it has that kind of haunting and that driven guitar part, but without it being overbearing. And there's just a mystery to the melody, I think, that complements the lyrics. And so it fit like a puzzle piece too. I didn't really have to rework too much of the phrasing or anything, just the melody and the placement. And sometimes that's all you need is just somebody lights the spark for the idea for a song. And where I was trying to finish it, I didn't have the melody. I was missing just some pieces to really inspire the finished product. I had probably about a third of the lyrics, and then when he sent me that track with the guitar part, the lyrics just came so quickly, and it was really a cool moment for us to realize the teamwork that we're learning that it doesn't have to be a 1, 2, 3 create and finish right now. It can be give it some space, live with it. We'll approach each other, give each other space to respond, instead of a shrugging of the shoulders like it used to be, and me going, "He hates me," So
that's awesome. So you've come around pretty much on your songwriting. Pretty well.
We have.
That's pretty. So is it like do the lyrics just come to you, or does it take a long time? Do you take pieces here and there?
Yeah.
Like I've heard some songwriters, they have to wait 2 years before they have a good.
It's so subjective, man. It's like sometimes you do have to wait a lot of years for it to work out, and sometimes you have 10 minutes and you got a full song. And it's like, where did that come from? What is happening? It's so funny. You listen to these prolific songwriters like Neil Young or somebody, and they talk about, to me, they're talking about something spiritual, because they'll talk about it's not coming to me, but they can almost feel when an idea is coming, and they're like, it's beyond me. I just have to reach out and accept it.
Yeah.
And, you know, like,
it's like do what you were created to do. It's pretty amazing
Right.
how people have that ability and talent to just pull it in and and put it together. It's so awesome.
And yet there are times where I try and write a lyric and everything sucks. I mean, everything. It's like I couldn't, write a lyric to save my life right now. But then there are days where it's like it just comes. It's really there's a mystery side to it.
Beautiful unseen.
Yeah, that's right, man. That's right. Yeah.
There's no need to fear it. Just
that's right.
That's right. Yeah.
So good.
That's awesome. So, okay, one more. The telephone song.
Oh,
Okay, you
The
guys
black-
are breaking up, right?
No, we're not breaking up. That is definitely the black sheep of the record.
It is.
Lyrically. Yeah.
Lyrically.
Yeah.
But it was an important song. I wrote that one. Tim added one chord to it, but he
Steph wrote the whole thing.
I wrote
all
the
by
whole
herself.
thing.
She was real inspired.
I was. You know, I want to honor like where and who that song is about. But you know, I think the beauty of art is that it doesn't always have to be taken literally. Like it wasn't about a boyfriend. So it was about a different kind of relationship, and it was ending. The way we had known relationship was ending, and I wanted just some face-to-face time to honor that, like to close the season. And this person just was not offering that or giving or reaching out, allowing that. And I was frustrated. I felt like after several years that just a little bit of your time wouldn't hurt. And I wrote the song in a moment of frustration, and it was therapeutic. And then we had this face-to-face time, and everything's fine. It's totally resolved. But
closure,
really good closure. And there's no hard feelings. It's just sometimes the song is birthed out of a moment and an experience.
Steph, actually, we have a really good counselor in Nashville that he's got a great ministry where he counsels touring musicians.
That's awesome.
For like $5 a session, and that $5 goes to build wells in Africa. And so
That's so awesome.
It's really neat. Yeah.
That's
And so Stephanie, I remember she had a session with him and she talked about this particular situation, and he said to her, I think it's okay that you say to this person, I don't break up on the telephone. And she was like,
Lyric.
Yeah.
writes it down. And then like 24 hours later, after, it tumbles around in her head, she's like, I have a song.
Yeah. Tim was gone. I had to pick him up from the airport, and I remember taking him home and driving him home and playing him like an iPhone memo on my phone.
Right.
And he typically, I get silence and he wants to live with it for a minute, and he's kind of like, cool, babe. But this one, he was like, that's a great song. You need to finish that. So.
That's awesome.
Awesome. Well, do you have any fanboy House of Hero questions?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Let's see. Smokey P. What's next?
Yeah. Okay. So we did the Smokey P, and that was kind of our first little thing outside of a label. We're totally independent doing that, and so we just wanted to get something out. And in hindsight, to me, it feels a little bit rushed, but I still love it.
It's
some
good.
of those songs. Thank you very much.
It's really good. Like,
Appreciate that.
I mean, this is the closest you've been to that amazing.
End is not the end.
The end is not the end,
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
dude, that album, I can sit and drive for 2 hours and listen to it over and over again, and get something new from it every time. It's so awesome.
That's so cool.
And I hear all your influences in it, like the Queen stuff, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Like when it comes out with those singers, the men, like in the
Right.
I forget the name of the song.
Codename Raven.
Yes,
That
Codename
one?
Raven.
Yeah.
Dude, that's so awesome.
Thanks, man.
My favorite song that y'all have done, and I don't think it's anybody else's favorite, but it's mine, is Choose Your Blade.
Oh, right on. Yeah.
Dude, that song is amazing. So
Thank
what was
you very much.
like? Did you write that, or was
AJ
that
and I wrote that. We actually
Okay.
wrote that at the beginning of the sessions for Cold Hard Want. That was one of the first tracks we wrote for that record.
Wow.
And right up until the last day we were recording that record, we planned on it being on Cold Hard Want.
Really?
And then I think the day before we listened to that one and Suspect together, and we were like, nah, Suspect's got to be the one. So, but we went ahead and recorded Choose Your Blade.
Dude,
and
it's just an amazing song. The concept is great. I've used it. I'm a youth pastor.
Oh, yeah.
And I've used that song as a, the picture of you have this inside you, have this inside you, and they're all constantly battling,
That's right.
And you've got to conquer it. That's
it's
such a good thing. But anyways, I'm a big fan.
Right on. Well, thank
you. My protege, he's Riley. He comes on here sometimes, but he's even a bigger fan. He's seen you like twice, I think.
Oh, cool.
But he'll be here tonight. I've got to introduce you. But
yeah,
anyways,
absolutely, man. Yeah, that's really so cool. Well, what's next for us? We're starting our full-length record on July 20th.
Okay.
So we did a fundraiser for it last August and completed that, and we were kind of like, well, sweet, we got the money. Let's go and throw something together. And that's honestly what it would have been. We would have thrown it together.
Right.
And like we were talking about earlier, I feel like we're at a place where we've gotten super safe because we can. You know what I mean? We don't want to rile any feathers within our interpersonal relationships.
Right.
Everything just works. I don't want to make him angry, so let's just do what we've always done. And this time around, we're going with a producer who called that out.
Wow.
And he said, you guys are way too safe lately. And so we spent a lot more time, because we got in this cycle of record a record, tour, record a record, tour, record a record, tour.
Sure.
Don't stop. Don't ever stop. Mm-hmm. And so this has been really nice for us to slow down, write way too many songs, and then pick the best ones.
Sure.
So are we hearing any Stephanie influence in the House of Heroes?
I probably. Yeah, I'm sure you will. Awesome. Yeah. Absolutely, yeah.
And is she going to be on another track?
We've got a song where we need a female vocal.
My fingers are crossed.
Yeah, I'm sure she'll definitely be on something. Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah. So you guys are actually you're writing a lot more material than you are putting out. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Which is kind of nice. That's what we've always done. Which
sure.
is it's so funny. Like we'll listen to some songs and I'm trying to think of what a good example is. But on this record, there are one or two songs that were supposed to be on that we wrote during the End Is Not the End sessions, and it was just like, nah, we're not ready for this yet. Put it to the side, and then we listened to it again. It's like, why didn't we record that song? That's great. It's just you're not ready for it yet, But awesome. The Cop from Cold Hard Want was supposed to be on Suburba. And
really?
Our producer at the time was like, no, I don't like that song. It's not going to make the cut. But then 2 years later, we go to record, and the producer's like, that song's awesome. Why isn't it on the record yet?
Nice.
So, I love that aspect of it, where it's like, it loosens the pressure a little bit to where you're like, we have to include, if we're writing it, we have to include it, Not necessarily, you can put it off to the side because you might not be ready for it yet.
Right. Like Switchfoot in comparison, they write so many songs, and I hear John Foreman writes a song a day or something like that. He says, and so it's just amazing to me to do that, and then to have come to the band with I got 90 songs, we got to slim it down to 12.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, how do you even begin that process? It's got to be
rough.
Yeah, it's got to be because these are your babies, I imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And so. Yeah. How does the interpersonal communication go with the bandmates? I've seen in your Wikipedia page needs to be updated, by the way.
Oh yeah,
the House of Heroes. But I've seen you've had a lot of shifts in bass and drums and stuff. How does the interpersonal communication work as a band? Is it like marriage or? What's it like?
Should be like marriage, but we fall short of that, I think.
It's so strange to me, their communication.
Yeah. The problem is we've been playing together since we were 16 years old. And,
it's a long time.
Yeah, it is. And so when we first started touring, we were 19, and we're just a bunch of young kids that don't know what we're doing. And so we found coping mechanisms to not go deep with each other, and keep the peace, because what matters is that the band survives. It doesn't matter. My feelings don't matter. His feelings don't matter. We're going to push all that aside in order for the business to keep going, the business of the band. And it's awful,
Yeah.
I've told Steph a lot of times
that'll crush you.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I've said, I can't wait for the band to end so that I can just go to being friends with these guys exclusively. But the truth is, why can't we have that and the band right now? Yeah. All it's going to take is some honesty, and it's gonna hurt. It's really gonna hurt to be honest with each other and to have to face these things. Like, if it's gonna hurt me to hear from my brothers in the band that, hey, you know what? When you do this, it really hurts my feelings, and you're a real jerk when you do that.
But sure. You know what you're explaining there is not just indicative of a band, but of a church.
Yeah, that's right.
That's so good.
Churches are so closed between one another, and we're supposed to be.
We can't be honest,
like we are in a marriage, and open and honest,
that's
and confessing our faults one to another, and all that good thing. But instead, it's a gossip mill a lot of times.
Yeah.
And so, it's one of the things that we talk about a lot. That we have a long way to go to be that koinonia fellowship.
Yeah. Yes.
But it's exactly what you're talking about, but on a little bit bigger basis.
Totally, man. Yeah, you got to keep the peace. That's what comes first. But no, man, let's truly love each other.
Dirty.
Yeah, let's dig in.
Be real.
Yeah, that's right.
The key, man. So.
All right,
it's awesome,
guys. Thanks for being here.
You bet.
Super excited about the show tonight.
Yeah,
dude.
We have a show down here at the coffee shop tonight. So. But you guys can get a hold of Copperlily's EP and their full album on iTunes and probably in other places too, local stores.
Yeah.
You have your website.
Amazon.
Yeah, copperlilymusic.com. Right. Yeah. We got vinyl coming out soon. So
sweet.
Yeah.
Awesome.
We'll have to check it out.
Well, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Right,
thanks so much.
Okay.
45.
Sorry about my phone.
You didn't even know.
I didn't even know.
You have no idea.